Hello students, myself Dr. Sachin Kapur, and I wish you a very warm welcome to this session of Zoology Lecture. The topic of our discussion today is female reproductive system. As you can see here, I have drawn a rough diagram of the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system consists of the primary sex organs, that is ovaries, and the secondary sex organs, that is fallopian tubes, uterus, vagina, vulva. Let's understand why we say that ovaries are primary sex organs and these structures are secondary sex organs. See, primary sex organs are those which are directly involved in the process of gamete formation, that is gametogenesis. Their function is to produce the gametes. Ovaries are mixed tissue. Now, when we say mixed tissue, that means they are performing two functions. One is the gametogenic function, production of the female gamete. And what is female gamete? Ova, or the egg cell. And these also produce the sex hormones, that is the endocrine function. So we'll write here, when you say gametogenesis, that is referring to oogenesis, formation of the female gamete. Oogenesis has been discussed as a separate topic in other lectures. Endocrine function is the secretion of the female sex hormones. Ovaries produce steroid hormones as well as proteinaceous hormones. The steroid hormones are what? Estrogens. When you say estrogen, estrogen is a category of steroid hormones. It includes estrone, estriol, estradiol, and progestins. Progestin is a category and it includes progesterone, 17-alpha hydroxyprogesterone. So ovaries are mixed tissues. They are performing gametogenic function, which is also called cytogenic function, as well as endocrine function, right? Ovaries are attached to the uterus by the ovarian ligaments. There are so many ligaments which are supporting the uterus. There is suspensory ligament and there are ovarian ligaments also. After this primary sex organ, that is ovary, let's talk about the secondary sex organs. As you can see in this diagram, the secondary sex organs, they are fallopian tubes. This structure is fallopian tube. Fallopian tubes are paired structures. I have just shown it on one side. Fallopian tubes, then this central pear-shaped structure that is called uterus. The lower narrow neck-like region of uterus is called cervix. Cervix opens into vagina through this external os. Vagina is nearly 10 centimeters long muscular tube which receives the male penis during sexual intercourse and also serves as the passage for the flow of the menstrual blood, and along with the cervical canal it functions as birth canal. The baby comes out through the vagina during parturition. As far as fallopian tubes are concerned, let's understand the structure of the fallopian tube. Fallopian tubes, they are also called uterine tubes or salpinx or oviducts. So the other names for the fallopian tubes are oviducts, uterine tubes, salpinx. Each fallopian tube has these regions. This is the most dilated part of the fallopian tube called ampulla. Ampulla projects as a funnel-shaped structure that is called infundibulum and has these finger-like processes which are called fimbriae. What is the function of fimbriae? When this oocyte is released from the ovary at the time of ovulation, the fimbriae are supposed to capture the released oocyte. This oocyte is actually secondary oocyte that will enter into the ampulla. Fertilization generally occurs in the ampulla region. More precisely, it is ampullary isthmic junction where the fertilization occurs. This central portion of the fallopian tube is what is isthmus, and this part which enters into the uterus is called intramural part or the uterine part. What are the functions of fallopian tubes? Number one, capturing of the released oocyte. Number two, site of fertilization. Number three, if the fertilization happens, the zygote is formed. Zygote will undergo cleavage divisions to form morula. That morula is traveling through the fallopian tube and it enters into the uterus. So the cells of the fallopian tube, they are ciliated columnar epithelial cells. The beating of the cilia push that fertilized structure or the embryo towards the uterus. And the cells of the fallopian tube also secrete nutritive substances which provide nutrition to the developing embryo. So those are the functions of the fallopian tube. Inflammation of fallopian tube is salpingitis. Both fallopian tubes open into a central, strong, muscular, sac-like structure that is called uterus. So you can see this structure as uterus. Uterus is also called hystera or womb. Uterus has upper dome-shaped area that is called fundus. This is the main body of the uterus or the corpus, and this lower narrow neck-like region is called cervix. Cervix communicates internally with the uterus by this internal os. Os is referring to opening. This is internal os, this is external os. The space between internal and external os is called cervical canal. Cervical canal along with the vagina forms the birth canal. Cervix, it has mucus secreting glands, cervical glands which secrete the cervical mucus. The viscosity of the cervical mucus varies throughout the reproductive cycle, that is throughout the menstrual cycle. Normally it is very thick and does not allow the entry of the foreign substances, say pathogens, but around the days of ovulation, the cervical mucus becomes very thin to facilitate the sperm entry. So the secretions of the cervical mucus, they are showing a kind of change in their viscosity. Wall of uterus has 3 layers. The outermost layer is called perimetrium. Outermost layer is perimetrium. The middle muscular layer of the uterine wall is called myometrium. This myometrium has smooth muscles. Smooth muscles, as you know, are involuntary. Progesterone hormone inhibits their contractions and maintains pregnancy. Oxytocin hormone stimulates their contractions and result in parturition. So these uterine muscles or the myometrium layer, it is the thickest layer. The smooth muscles are involuntary. The innermost layer is the endometrium. This endometrium has columnar epithelial cells. The thickness of the endometrium varies throughout the menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle has been discussed as a separate topic in another lecture. There you will see that the menstrual cycle, during the menstrual cycle, there is formation of the layers, more layers in the endometrium because of action of estrogen hormone. Stratum basalis layer forms more and more layers which are called stratum functionalis. At the time of menstruation or at the time of menstrual bleeding, the stratum functionalis layer is shed, right? So that was about uterus. What are the functions of uterus? Uterus is the site of implantation. When the morula will enter into the uterus, it will float in the uterine environment for 3 days. It will absorb the nutritive substances. It will change into blastula. Blastula will attach with the wall of uterus. And that process of attachment with the wall of uterus is called implantation. So, uterus is the site of implantation. Number 2, uterus is the site for the formation of placenta. Number 3, the embryo, the baby, finally develops in the uterus. So, it is the site for the fetal development. These are the functions of uterus. The surgical removal of uterus is called hysterectomy. Hysterectomy is the surgical removal of uterus, and salpingectomy is the surgical removal of fallopian tubes. Now, as I said that the uterus opens into the vagina through this external os. This structure is vagina. The wall of vagina is thrown into folds like this. These folds are called vaginal rugae. These stimulate the glans penis during sexual intercourse and helps in inducing ejaculation. Throughout the reproductive life of the female, that is from menarche, beginning of the menstrual cycle, to menopause, Vagina contains a bacteria called Lactobacillus acidophilus. This bacteria keeps the vaginal pH acidic by converting glycogen into lactic acid. So vaginal pH is acidic around 3.9 to 4.5. Acidic pH minimizes the chances of vaginal infection. But this acidic pH is also detrimental to the sperms. Sperms, they are present in the seminal fluid where the pH is alkaline, 7.4 approximately. So that acidic pH is detrimental to the sperms. Many sperms, they die in the vagina because of acidic pH. The wall of vagina also has a special type of cells called dendritic cells. These are the cells of immune system. These dendritic cells, they function as a route for entry of HIV into the female body. Say the seminal fluid which is deposited in the vagina is infected, it has HIV. That HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, which causes AIDS, HIV will enter into the female circulation through these dendritic cells. Remember one more thing, there are no glands in vagina. The vaginal lubrication is because of the secretion of the cervical glands, right? The external opening of the vagina, that is vaginal orifice, is protected or it is guarded by a perforated membrane. That membrane is called hymen. So hymen is a perforated membrane. The pores allow the flow of the menstrual blood. Hymen generally ruptures during the first penetrative sexual intercourse, may or may not be accompanied with mild bleeding and pain. But sometimes the hymen is so rigid that it has to be removed surgically. Hymen can rupture because of many other reasons also: horse riding, swimming, some kind of vigorous athletic activity, vaginal infection, use of vaginal tampons. So there are different reasons for the rupturing of hymen. Presence or absence of intact hymen is not a sign of virginity of the female. It is a misconception. But in certain cultures, it is a big issue. There is a surgery to reconstruct the ruptured hymen that is called hymenoplasty. So hymenoplasty is a surgery to reconstruct the ruptured hymen. Last in the female reproductive system is the vulva or the pudendum. Vulva is the female external genitalia. So the female external genital organs or the vulva includes the anterior fatty area that is called mons pubis, covered with pubic hair. It has a labia majora, which are two folds of the thick skin which form the outer boundary of the vulva. These are comparable to the scrotum of male. Then there are labia minora, which form the inner boundary of the vulva. There is a sensitive structure called clitoris. Clitoris is comparable to the penis of male. It is a highly sensitive structure because it has rich supply of nerves. It plays role in sexual stimulation. The space which is enclosed by the labia minora is called the vestibule. That vestibule has opening of urethra and opening of vagina. Vestibule region also has vestibular glands. There are greater vestibular glands and there are lesser vestibular glands. The greater vestibular glands are called Bartholin's glands. They surround the opening of the vagina and produce a lubricating fluid. The lesser vestibular glands, also called paraurethral glands or the glands of Skene, these surround the opening of urethra, the glands of Skene. Their secretion neutralizes the acidity of urine. So that was in brief about the female reproductive system. We discussed about the primary sex organs, that is ovaries, which are performing oogenesis, ovulation, and as I told you, these two has been discussed as a separate topic in the other video lectures. And the secondary sex organs, fallopian tubes, uterus, vagina, and vulva. So that's all about the basic anatomy or the structure of the female reproductive system.